Speaker. I want to begin by referencing that great New Zealander, Sir Owen Woodhouse, and the amazing piece of work that he did in the 1960s and early 70s on behalf of New Zealanders, in which he persuaded New Zealanders, in fact, to engage in a great social contract where we gave away our right to sue and thus gave away the expensive, inefficient and haphazard basis of the harem-scarum of legal process as a means of trying to achieve redress and accident compensation in exchange for our accident compensation scheme. A scheme based on principles of community responsibility, comprehensive entitlement, complete rehabilitation, real compensation and administrative efficiency. That's the social contract that was engaged in between the state and New Zealanders. I mention those principles not as a point of mere historic interest, but because, in fact, that social contract still exists. And New Zealanders expect, rightfully, that it will be honoured by the state in the form of the accident compensation scheme. And so this is not just some theoretical construct, because indeed in the Act that the Accident Compensation Corporation implements, the purpose of the Act is listed, and I'll just give you the first part of it, sir. The purpose of ACC is to enhance the public good and reinforce the social contract represented by the first accident compensation scheme. The Woodhouse principles, sir, are not some historical curiosity. They are indeed part of the current accident compensation scheme, and they deserve to be honoured. ACC, over its history since that time, has been through phases of good and bad, and I have to say, sadly, that in recent years it's mostly been bad. We've seen progressive erosion of entitlements, so that comprehensive entitlement that was set out in that social contract has been eroded, sir. We've seen the unfortunate experiment of competition in the work account, and thankfully its reversal. We've seen the introduction of future funding, and so that's something that the Green Party still opposes, because future funding is funding ACC as if it were an insurance company, and so it is not. It is a public service, and it's a service that ought to be funded in the same way as every other public service on a pay-as-you-go basis. And when I say you, sir, obviously I mean pay as one goes. And the problem with that, the problem with funding it as if it were a private insurance company, is that that sets up some of the same drivers that a private insurance company might have. And that's how the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith, as the previous minister, and his guy, John Judge, in 2009 made the extraordinary claims about what a financial mess ACC was, the whole technical insolvent claim of an organisation that at that time had something like $15 billion in reserves and an operating surplus of $3.5 billion. And they do so on the basis that Michael Woodhouse is just explaining of accounting sophistry associated with that future funding model. That actually for most New Zealanders, an organisation that had that level of reserves and investments is not something that is in a disastrous financial state. A return to pay-as-you-go, sir, would enable the organisation to greatly reduce those reserves, use them for some other meritorious purpose, and also reduce levies. Sounds like a good idea to me, sir. But in 2009, the National Party, who prior to the 2008 election had been working with the Australian insurance industry on plans for privatisation and accident compensation, brought in the changes that they wanted to do to implement that agenda. And that's what this sick culture of disentitlement that I've been talking about actually arises from. So under instructions from Dr. Smith and the governance of John Judge, the organisation redeveloped its service delivery model away from the Woodhouse principles and away from the purpose in the very act that it was supposed to work under, and instead implemented a series of steps to try and establish that privatisation agenda. And so that's nowhere better illustrated than in the documents that I tabled in the House yesterday from ACC staffers Phil Riley and Denise Cosgrove, where they talk about how the organisation had been too focused on client needs, about how it needed to learn from the insurance industry and take on terms like actuarial release. And what actuarial release refers to, sir, is the practice of the insurance industry of looking at the claims that cost the most and targeting those for exit. And that's what ACC set out to do. And that was very neatly illustrated in the 60 Minutes program on Sunday in the graph that demonstrated how people with long-term injuries who needed their earnings-related compensation were very aggressively dumped from the accident compensation scheme. Phrases like low-hanging fruit used by Riley and Cosgrove to refer to...
Order. The member must use the full names of... Sorry, my correction. Member will continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, indeed, they're not members of Parliament, and hopefully they never will be. Using a term like low-hanging fruit to refer to those people with long-term injuries that they were attempting to remove from ACC's books. So, sir, that's where these practices come from. This targeting of people with these injuries, the shonky assessments that all members of Parliament will be aware of from correspondence from constituents, these extraordinary breaches of privacy, not just once, not just twice, but again and again and again, the culture of denial of claims and disentitlement. I agree with the comment made by Michelle Bogue in that 60 Minutes program, where she says the default assumption of ACC has become that the people who are making claims are fraudsters. That's become the default. Now, while it's true, sir, that of course there will always be people who are attempting to rip off the system, by and large that's not what people are doing. And sir, the scheme should go back to its original Woodhouse principles. The Bromman-Puller case that we saw illustrated vividly on 60 Minutes is far from unique, and again, all members will be aware of it. The only thing that distinguishes that case is that in Bromman-Puller we had someone with the personal tenacity, resourcefulness and connections to keep on fighting. And because she did that, sir, the techniques that ACC has typically used to keep on saying no and keep on denying until people give up actually failed and have been exposed. That's the only reason, sir. ACC is used to getting away with it. It's a great institution, sir, ACC. It's a great institution that does have a proud history and still, as the Minister says, some good people in it. But, sir, it is on the wrong path. It has been since 2009. We need to return it to the Woodhouse principles. We need to return it to a culture of good public service. And the departure of Nick Smith as Minister, the departure of John Judge as Chairman, and today's departure of Ralph Stewart as Chief Executive are necessary steps, but insufficient for the purpose. And I take some heart from the Minister's commitment to a culture change and an understanding of the total need for overhaul of those privacy management processes. We will be alongside the government and giving her some suggestions about the agenda to achieve that. That total culture change is precisely where we need to go, and we need to go there now.
Good speech, Kevin. Mr. Speaker.
I call the Right Honourable